All right. Today we have a question from the community, and this is incredible. Very lately, we have been getting requests for relationship things, which is amazing. And we also believe that it is extremely necessary because, let's be honest, every interaction we have with somebody is some kind of relationship. Whether it's very surface level, I passed them on the street, hey, bye, had a relationship with that person for a half a second. Or if it's a spouse, right? And you're all in their business. Work, family, friends, co-workers.
Yep.
They're all different types of relationships. So now the question from the community is about toxic relationships. Essentially, what do you do whether somebody is intentionally or unintentionally sabotaging you or making you feel small, making you feel unimportant, making you feel unworthy or lesser than? And how do you remove yourself from an unproductive relationship? And the difference between a necessary relationship and an unnecessary relationship. The difference between coping with a parent that has a negative attitude or a boyfriend or girlfriend that is condescending. Whew, that is a load. And we could talk about this for literally like hours, I'm sure. Which actually, we probably will be doing some kind of workshop at some point. What is with these chairs? A workshop at some point on relationships. This is something that we are becoming increasingly passionate about because relationships are work. And when you are able to work through them well, it's really a blessing. So I'll let you start.
Yeah.
Unless you want to write your little thoughts down there.
So there were a lot of questions in one question, but really to start off is, when is a relationship necessary versus when it's unnecessary? And in life we have three resources: money, time, and energy. Time and energy are the most valuable because they are the most limited. Okay? A minute that goes by is never a minute that's going to come back. And because your energy is correlated with your time, right? Like the more time passes by, the less energy you have, right? You want to make sure that you not just protect it, but you want to make sure that you make the most of it. So I would consider an unnecessary relationship to be the type of relationship where not only am I not gaining from it anything right now, but it is becoming very evident that there will be no gain in the future. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's say if you are currently in a relationship where, let's say your spouse is in med school and in residency and you're barely able to see them, and you've made a commitment that you're going to take care of the financials, and cover all the bills, and you find yourself so many nights where maybe all of your other friends or whatnot are like, oh, where's so-and-so, and you're always by yourself. It's because maybe you're not gaining much in the moment, but you know that person to be who they are, and you know that there will be a reward in the future.
They're working towards something greater.
Yes. So, I would consider that to still be necessary. Now, if you're like, I'm not gaining anything from this right now, and I've also seen enough to know deep down in my heart that I will not gain any benefit from it in the future, that is when I will tell you it is no longer necessary.
Now, because that will also mean that you don't have anything to give or to bring, because you are going to end up feeling probably some kind of resentment
Yeah, so going back to life and the buckets, right? Like every day there's either a deposit or a withdrawal when it comes to, like energy and time. No matter what, there's going to be a withdrawal. Like you cannot gain a day back.
But energy is renewable.
And yes, sorry. Time is never going to come back. Energy can be restored. Okay, so if like going back to those buckets, like what has the consistency been of the withdrawals versus deposits? Okay, like
are you in debt?
Yeah, like if you're in severe debt and you're like, dude, like it's been toxic for like years, are you seeing any signs that the person is actively doing something to better themselves? Or are they just telling you, oh, I will do this at some point, or promises. When you start to do this, I will do that.
Empty promises.
Yeah. So, gotta consider that. Now, the other thing with regards to necessary versus unnecessary. Now, let's say, for example, if this person, okay, who is, bluntly put, draining. Let's say if this person who's been like constantly draining you, somebody that you've been born into, let's say it's a mother or a father, well, you can't really pick your parents. So, I would just recommend give them what they need. However, protect yourself in a way where you're not being taken advantage of. Okay? If you are, putting too much time and energy, when there's a better solution and you're inserting yourself in a toxic environment time and time again, then you got to consider it, right? I'm not talking like, God forbid, like a sick parent who's got Alzheimer's. Like, yes, of course it's draining, it's heartbreaking, they need you and you want to spend quality time with them. I'm talking like if you have a parent who's just like extremely unconscious and selfish, and they're making you feel bad for everything that you do and you don't do. Let's say if you still choose to live with them because you're paying less rent or anything like that, then
whose fault is that?
Are you choosing the easier way out? Because sometimes it's not like how much money are you saving. Sometimes it's about how much is it costing you in energy and vitality. And the way that I see it is that, like when my spirit is taken away, it costs me the most. So, what you want to consider is, number one, what is your relationship to that person? Like, have you chosen that relationship or were you born into it? If you were born into it, you can't really exit out, but you can limit it to whatever degree you want to. And by the way, just because something is hard doesn't mean that it's impossible. Okay? And I had one more thing to say about this, and then I'm just going to give it to you, is you want to consider how long, let's say if you're like, okay, like I've been consistently being drained, right? And you feel like withdrawal, you're now getting debt. Like, how much debt are you willing to get into? So, you need to figure out what are you willing to tolerate, because there comes a time where if the same thing keeps happening over and over and over again and you don't do anything about it, it becomes your fault.
100%.
Yeah.
So I have several things on this, necessary versus unnecessary. Somebody who's intentionally condescending or making you feel less than versus somebody who's unintentionally doing that. All these scenarios exist. Now, like Sarit, I agree completely 100%. An unnecessary relationship is just something that is neither party is bringing value to the other, and we don't see anything like that happening in the future. Completely unnecessary relationship, right? Now, people are intentionally harmful or toxic because they are in pain. They're hurting. They're not happy with where their life is at. And, unfortunately, often they are a victim in that kind of mind frame. And it feels better for them to make other people not feel good. because instead of trying to raise themselves up to a certain standard, they'd rather bring somebody else down to theirs because that's easier. And, you know, I have been this person. And so I know firsthand that it's usually very like manipulative and, you know, if you don't do this for me or that for me, or, you know, just, it can go that route. That is just absolutely toxic. And, you know, if you, like, I care about people, I really do. The way that I filter people that come into my life and the distance I allow them to come into my life, I'm very particular, and sometimes that can seem very like mean or heartless or, you know, standoffish. However, like Sarit was saying, it's very important to protect your energy, because I will tell you, like, a positive energy is contagious just as much as a negative energy is contagious. And if somebody has a really negative energy, do not expect me to go out of my way to let that person into my close inner circle without a conversation. Now, I still want to help that person. Absolutely. Those are the people that need the most help. And so, yes, we want to be able to surround ourselves with those people in a certain degree. However, when you are in that kind of relationship, for one, is this person meaningful enough to me from like a be really close to me standpoint that I am willing to have a conversation with them to see if there's any openness to making adjustments for their own personal growth. Okay? And that conversation is not an attack on them, telling them everything that they did wrong or what they're not doing good or how mean they are. That conversation is a conversation about, is there a way that I can show up better so that, you know, the way that you respond or react to me is something that is helpful and beneficial to me as well. You got to take responsibility for it. Now, if you do not see that person as somebody that is worth having that conversation with, begin to distance yourself and let it go. There's no harm in that. Just because you don't want to be friends with somebody because they don't jive well with you doesn't mean you don't care about that person. There are billions of people, and you can care about every single one of them. That doesn't mean that every single one of them are your people, and that's okay. That's 100% okay. And that also doesn't mean that just because somebody disagrees with you that you have to hate them. That's also not okay. Mm-mm. But, you know, okay, somebody who's unintentionally toxic, which means they're unaware, then the same thing is that person somebody that you can see in the future wanting to have some kind of relationship with? And is it worth having a conversation to say, hey, you know, I notice XYZ and I'm wondering what I can do better, or if there's something that I've done to make you feel a certain way, you know, so that you can kind of like bring to their attention or to their awareness that they're making you feel a certain way as well. And you're wondering if there's something you can do to help them to respond better, or be more positive, you know. So those are the kind of ways that I go about it. Now look, if this has been going on for a while, if it's a boyfriend or a girlfriend, let them go. What's the attachment? Like, if it makes my heart hurt so bad when I see people in like relationships that they chose to be in that are harmful to them, and they just stay in it because, oh, when it's good, it's really good, but when it's bad, it's so bad. Like, yeah, but is it worth the amount that it takes from you? Because there's a difference between receiving and taking. When you receive something, you're open when somebody gives you a gift. When you take something, it is usually not solicited, which means that you have, without permission, grabbed something from somebody. Okay? So if this person is taking and taking and taking and taking, eventually it's your fault because you continue to allow it to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's all about, how do I take responsibility? Anything in relationships, I feel like, is, what am I responsible for in this confrontation of some sort, in this disagreement, in this misunderstanding, whatever it is, what am I responsible for? Always ask yourself that first. What am I responsible for? And you know what? Like, if it's a parent or somebody, you didn't choose them. You're right. You have no choice who your parents are. You don't get to be born first and then be like, oh, let me go parent shopping. No, that's not how it works. But you can edit relationships, and you can choose how much you share with anybody. So, I had a family member who always would ask me, like, when are you going to get a real job? When are you going to get a real job? When are you going to get a real job? Because I was a personal trainer, and this person thought that, like, a real job meant that you're a doctor or a lawyer or
sit in an office,
a professional of sorts, right? And that wasn't my idea, and that would not make me happy. And so, I had to then be very mindful about how much I shared. It doesn't mean that, like, I don't care about them, I don't want to be around them. It's just, there's just certain things I'm not going to tell you, because I don't care about what your opinion is on those things, because I'm going to do the things that I need to do to make me happy. If you are an independent adult, you are 100% fully responsible for you. I don't care where you grew up. I don't care who your parents are. I don't care what experiences you had. Our experiences in our childhood, yes, shape who we are, and yes, can make things more difficult to overcome in adulthood, 100%. I am not disregarding that fact, but you are 100% responsible for the relationships that you're currently in. And if you don't like them, it is 100% your responsibility to choose which direction you want to go. And really, it all comes down to communication and taking responsibility. But I always say, if something is not serving you,
let it go.
Let it go. And that sounds selfish, but if it's not serving you, how much are you serving it, really? Because usually these things are a two-way street. And I always say, and I firmly believe this, that if one person in a relationship is not happy, the other person is not either. So, I got real deep and real passionate. I didn't mean to, like, make anybody feel bad or whatever, but, like, even in a marriage, this is harder. Sorry, I want to say one more thing. A marriage is more difficult, okay? Only because in your mind, it is more difficult. You have a piece of paper that has bound you together. And you know what? You might have children, a house, shared things, and that makes it more complicated. Yes. I'm not a mom, so I cannot say what I would do in that kind of situation. But what I do know, as a kid who watched my neighbors, my best friends, as a kid growing up, their parents separate, is that a kid would rather see their parents happy than stay unhappy and continue to fight and continue to resent each other or be hostile towards each other, because that's what you teach your kids in that environment. Because I had conversations with them. I watched what was happening, and they would have rather seen their parents be happy separate than hostile and resentful together. So
I think that also adds a burden on the child, because then it's like, oh, like, why didn't you, like, leave one another? Well, because we wanted to keep the family together.
it's like, then it's my fault.
So now you're putting the blame on me. It's like you're making me a burden. And I
Depending on their age too.
Well, of course, but
Who knows?
look, I think if you are struggling with the current relationship, if it is a parent, or if it is a parent, even if it's a brother or sister, if they're being toxic, that does not mean that you even need to keep them in your life. Parents, though, that's a different story, right? You can limit your distance, okay? Now, if they're dependent on you, then, you know, like, treat them as they treated you. Unless, treat them as they treated you. If they did a good job bringing you up, if they gave you food, then do what you gotta do, okay?
Yeah.
Now, I think it's the law of reciprocity. Now, if it's anybody else and if it is not serving you and you're staying in it,
Don't be afraid.
you're being selfish for staying in it if you do choose to stay in it.
Yeah.
Life is full of problems. Problems are not to be avoided, problems are to be solved.
Amen.
So if you find yourself that, like, in a relationship, just like anything else, if you're running into the same problem over and over and over again, you, like, at some point you gotta ask yourself or the other person, like, why?
Mm-hmm.
And if you keep on running into the same thing over and over and over again, and there's no change on their end, but you're willing to change, then if you continue to stay in it, it is your fault.
Yeah.
I think, you know, like, the biggest thing that people have is like, oh, but I'm scared to hurt them. I'm like, you are hurting them right now because you are enabling them.
Wow, that is powerful.
I think when you enable someone, you're hurting them, and the worst thing is that you're hurting yourself too in the process. And you know what? You're hurting God too. Because you are not living up to your potential. If you are pursuing a mediocre relationship, you are not living up to your potential because you're being held back anytime you want to do something new or anytime you want to do something big. And that, I think that is selfish, because not living up to your potential is living a life that is not in alignment with what God surely wants you to be. And I consider that to be selfish.
So regardless of what your religious beliefs are, doesn't matter. Like, you know, we're here. What's the reason? You know, we all have potential, which is unused energy. And what should we use that for? And, you know, we don't know everything. You know, we make our fair share of mistakes. We're not perfect. We don't think through every single scenario. You know, we've not been in every single scenario, but we have been in toxic relationships. We have had to have courage to either distance ourselves from somebody, to, you know, break up with somebody, to, you know, edit a relationship or conversation with certain people. And it is tough, especially when you care about people. You know, we really care about people, which is exactly why we do what we do. And sometimes it is the very people that we help that we want to sometimes get away from. The problem is that those are the people that need our help the most. And so what can we do to continue serving, but also to protect our energy? And also to protect, because if we don't, we can't continue to serve. It is true, you become who you surround yourself with. So I guess, you know, in conclusion, my thing would be, take a look at the people you surround yourself with the most and ask yourself, do I want any part of this person's life? Would I aspire to achieve what this person has achieved in one way, shape, or form, whether that's, you know, in your fitness, in your health, in your relationships, in your finances, or in business, or professionally, or anything like that. Do I admire the majority of the way this person lives? The 5 people that you spend the most time with. I would say, besides kids, like if you have kids, they're dependent on you. Like I would assume that responsibility, and not just try to ditch your kids. However, you need to learn how to lead your kids, because that's a relationship that you have been put in control of. The question is, are you in control of it? That is a completely different conversation. But relationships are all about leadership. How do you lead you, and how do you communicate? So that would be the answer to that question. And hopefully that was helpful. And if you have any other thoughts or ideas, we're very open to hearing about them. Happy to, just as long as you are coming respectfully and you have peace and you have love and you desire to help and bring value, please, we want to hear what your thoughts are as well. Feel free to hit us in the comments, and hopefully this was helpful. If it was, hit that like button. If somebody you know needs to hear it, hit the share button. And if there is something in particular that really resonated with you or you liked about this video, also let us know in the comments so we can continue to bring you videos that you benefit from, because that is what we're here for.
Amen.